Welcome to Mind Over Matter, where we feature young Jamaicans who are shooting for the stars. I'm your host, Margaret Boyne. And remember, if you haven't subscribed to the channel as yet, please do and hit that notification bell. Today, my guest is an economist, a motivational speaker, and an author. Her book, entitled How God Brought Me Out Alive, has captured readers with its honesty and its powerful message. Her story takes us from a childhood marked by poverty to her achievements as an economist. We learn about her journey and the lessons she shares for overcoming adversity. My guest is Cappriece Clarke. Welcome to Mind Over Matter, Cappreice.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to talking to you. Your first book, How God Brought Me Out Alive, is your autobiography. Now, what inspired you to write this book and what did you hope to achieve by doing so?
Excellent question. I remember the exact day I got the inspiration to write this book. It was a few days after living on campus, and that was when I received the Principal Scholarship for Excellence. I went in my room on campus and something hit me. Why don't I record all the miracles that the Lord has wrought for me? And then I started to write because when I received the scholarship, it was a huge miracle for me because, as you've rightly said, I grew up in poverty. So having received a scholarship was a big deal. So I had to make note of it. And one of the inspirations behind writing the book was that I wanted to share with others how God has blessed me through everything that I've gone through and how He can bless them too. So that
Mm.
was what I was hoping when writing this book. Well, one of the things.
So, how long did it actually take you to write it?
It took me 10 years, 10
10
years to
years.
write this book. Yes,
Oh,
10 years.
okay. It was a self-published book?
Self-published? No. I got assistance from a publishing house, HCP
Yeah.
Publishers.
Mm-hmm. Why no? Because persons would say, boy, you're young still, you have whole heap of things left to accomplish. So why so early? You're still young.
And I've gotten that question before. What I wanted to do was to record all of what I have received and experienced from the Lord up to this point. And another thing
Mhm.
I'll say is that life is unpredictable. I may never ever get the chance to write it. So why not do it
Mhm.
now while I still have the
Mhm.
chance?
So true, Caprice. So you wrote candidly about growing up in poverty in Rosetown. Talk a little bit about growing up in Rosetown, some of the experiences you had there.
Rose Lane was a life-changing, transformative journey for me. I grew up with my parents and my older sister, where we had two bedrooms, a kitchen in a boarded house with zinc roofs and tarpaulin rather, and the bathroom was on the outside. And my father, he walked and sold belts for a living while my mother was in and out of jobs. Life was hard, but my parents tried their utmost best to ensure that we were well taken care of, that we had food. So we didn't have the luxuries, but we had the basic necessities. And it was during that time I've learned to value whatever it is that I have. So within the small that my parents would give me and my sister, we would turn that into something beautiful, turn it into something big, and value it and learn that whatever we have achieved in life or wherever we are, we should value it and give God thanks.
But in the book, though, Caprice, you talk about the leaking roof and boy, some condition them. And you need to tell us a little more about that, so that we understand how life really was like for you.
Sure. So whenever it rained, so the house that we lived in was erected for some time. Like it has been there for years. My grandmother first lived in it, then it was handed down to my
Okay.
father. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was a concrete structure with board and the zincs. So whenever it rained, it would leak on the inside as if it's raining on the outside. And my sister and I would grab our pans and buckets and set it to where it leaked the most. No, that didn't bother us too much because we turned that into a fun activity. So we would have a competition to see who catches or who fills their buckets first
First.
and then throw out the water and then repeat the entire process. So while those things were negatives, it didn't come
Mm-hmm.
across as that to us too much because hey, we were kids and we made the most of it.
Mm-hmm. But from your book though, I remember one story that drew my attention. Your family was put out at some point, put out on the street.
Yes.
Tell us a little about that.
Sure. So my mom and dad, they got separated when I was in high school at the time. So my mom and I and my sister, we moved to Bull Bay. No, my mom was unemployed at the time. So we couldn't afford to pay for food and pay rent at the same time. So over time, the landlady got upset and she threw us out. Yes, so we couldn't afford to pay rent, and they decided that enough is enough. So when once we weren't there, they decided that listen, we're gonna put out their things, and we came one afternoon and saw that they did that. So it was very it was sad, it was very embarrassing because people from in the community came and they gathered and they started to whisper. So it was a very
Mhm.
hard task, but the Lord made a way.
But as a child, though, experiencing these things, how did you feel at the time?
I felt like I didn't want to go to school because then people would see me and started to laugh and possibly talk about it. I recall one day while coming from school and two girls were there and I overheard them saying that I need to pay the ladies rent. I need to pay the ladies rent. So for me, it was very hard. It was embarrassing and it felt like I wanted to give up. Like it was too
Mhm.
much at times.
Education was your way out of poverty. Was this something that your parents valued?
100%. My parents believed in education so much that they worked tirelessly to send me through school. If I could give you an example, during primary school, when my sister and I didn't have lunch money, my father would still send us to school, and then by the time it was lunchtime, he would be there on campus with either the lunch money or some food to help us during that time. And even at the stage of matriculating into sixth form, I recall one day I had to meet my dad so we could go and seek funding for sixth form. And we walked the day, he encouraged me. And it just showed me that whatever it took, my parents, especially my dad, would undertake it to ensure that my sister and I were well educated. Not to mention at the
Mhm.
university level, when I wanted to get a guarantor for scholarship for student loan, somehow it didn't work out. And my father said, listen, you're going to go to university, whether it's the last thing I do, right? And he walked and sold belts because that was what he was doing at the time. And every semester he would provide that money for school so I could continue. And over time I got the scholarship for excellence in my first year, and from that time the scholarship took care of everything. So
Mhm.
yes, when it comes down to education, my parents will do whatever it takes, nothing illegally, but
Yes.
whatever it takes to ensure that I am at the highest level there is.
Mhm. But before you reach to UE, let's backtrack a bit. You passed your GSAT for St. Hugh's.
Yes.
Tell me about your experience at St. Hugh's.
My experience at St. Hugh's was dynamic, life changing, transformative, and it set me on a learning trajectory that I'm grateful for. Seeing that my parents didn't have it that much, I ensured that I learned as much as possible. I did my best to ensure that, listen, their money is not going to waste. And I joined several clubs. I was a part of the Interact Club, the Drama Club, the Sign Language Club, and I
Mm.
did whatever I could to meet my parents halfway. You know, when you see someone doing their best to ensure that
Mhm.
you are at the highest level, I also did my part to let them know that, listen, your money is not going to waste. So my experience at St. Hughes was life changing and fun for the most part. But apart from that, I didn't have a life outside of school. It was school, church, home, and that was it. Yes.
Okay, so going off to you know, I think you mentioned that you got scholarships.
Yes. So transitioning to university was very, very tedious because my parents did not know where the money was coming from, but they had a goal in mind and they worked towards that goal. So, as I said earlier, I wanted to get a student loan bureau, which didn't work out because I couldn't land a guarantor. And my father decided that, listen, it doesn't matter what it will take, I will send you to school. So he would walk extra to sell those belts and wallets to ensure that I was matriculating into university. So I paid my tuition fees by installments, and then I did my best to ensure
Mhm.
that his money wasn't going to waste. And at the end of my first year, I landed the principal's scholarship for excellence that covered tuition, living on hall expenses, and it even gave me miscellaneous fees to take care of miscellaneous things, of course.
I remember you saying something about going to UA and you didn't even have clothes. You had to wear your church clothes.
Yes. So as you said earlier, I grew up in poverty. So my parents could have only afforded the necessities, food,
Mhm.
clothes when they needed to be changed. So when I matriculated into university, over time my wardrobe became old and fuddy-duddy, right? So I
Yes.
only could get a new pair of shoes or slippers or clothes when they were well worn out. So because
Mhm.
I was a member of a church and I had church clothes, I would wear some of my church clothes
Yes.
on days where my other clothes did not look so well. Yes.
Living on campus, though. I mean, this was your first experience basically living on your own. How did that make you feel? You know, tell me about that.
Right. The experience was eye-opening for me because, as you said, it was my first time living by myself. So I lived in on Towers Hall, Elsie Riney Hall, and I had my own room, thankfully. I've always wanted that. So when I became more independent as a result of living
Mhm.
on my own. So there was no mommy or daddy to call on, and I had to make my own breakfast. I had to cook my own meals. And during the process, I've learned so much. It was on campus, I learned to bake chicken. And I learned how to knead the dumpling properly until a girl came to me and said, wow, your dumplings look perfect. And in addition to that, I spent some alone time and I got to know God more because when you're alone, you don't have
Mhm.
that company or those people to rely on. So I relied on the Lord more for whatever I'm going through. That's how I build my relationship with the Lord. So apart from that, it was good. I've learned a lot and I still have friends up to this day as a result of living on campus.
All right, so you did econ and stats.
Yes. I chose econ because during high school, a teacher of mine asked me what I wanted to become, and I told her a teacher. And upon realizing I found out that teachers weren't being paid so well. So I decided to become a lecturer. So she explained that to me and she said, why don't you become a lecturer and an economist? And I was like, wow. That's a win-win. So from that time, I ventured to do econ, and during university, they said it's better for you to do stats and econ because most of the courses
Mhm.
overlap. I was like, why not? So it was another win-win for me. So I decided to do econ and stats as a result of those things.
So you have your first degree in econ and stats, and you did your master's in
Econ,
econ.
yes.
Okay. So your whole journey was funded through scholarships?
The scholarship covered my undergraduate tuition and
Mm-hmm.
other expenses. For the masters, though, I worked during the summer, and because of
Okay.
that, I was able to fund the masters. In addition to that, when you're doing an econ masters, it is subsidized when you tutor. So I decided to take that option and become a tutor as well. And
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, I went on the work and travel program, so that assisted or that helped to boost
Okay.
paying my tuition.
So after that, now you're job hunting. You landed a job at Bank of Jamaica. So tell me about that.
The thing is, I've always wanted to work at Bank of Jamaica because when you're doing econ Cape subjects,
Yes.
they'll have this
Mm-hmm.
program where the bank, the econ seminars, right? So since then, I was introduced to the bank and I was like, wow, this is the place I want to work. So I applied every year after that. I didn't get through, but after I I finished my master's, I applied again and I got through. So the to have that dream in mind and for it to be fulfilled, it's
Mm-hmm.
an awesome feeling when I realized that I got accepted to work at the bank. And ever since then, I've been learning, growing, and just basking in this blessing that the Lord has given me.
So did it live up to your expectations? I keep hearing about a great place to work.
Yes, it did. It definitely did. And in the division that I work, research and
Mm,
economic programming division, it is like university. There's always something to learn, always something to know about, and with that it helps me to progress and to learn and to push myself further and further. So in my opinion, it is a great place to work.
well, I'm happy to hear that, Caprice. But going a little back to your book, rehashing the memories, writing the book. I mean, was it painful or did you find it liberating?
It was so liberating. Writing is something that I have a passion for. And once I get around those keys and start to type, it's like I can't help myself. So writing the
Oh.
book, it was pleasurable, it was liberating, it was a great experience for me because
Mhm.
recalling is just thinking about
Mhm.
where you were
Mhm.
rather to where you are now. It just inspired me to just write and type and just share everything. Well, most things is not everything
Mhm.
of how I moved from there to here. So it was a
Mhm.
very liberating experience for me.
What would you say are some of the lessons that you have learned from your experiences so far?
That's a great question. I've learned several life changing lessons. The number
Mhm.
one would be for me is to be humble. Regardless of where you are in life, be humble because it's that humility that will bring you to the next step of your life. So I was humble through it all. I didn't complain. As I shared when the house was leaking, it's like it wasn't a big deal for us. So I've
Mhm.
learned to be humble regardless of where I'm at. Another lesson I've learned is to be grateful in everything. My circumstances weren't ideal, but at the same time, I'm grateful. I was grateful. And even though where I'm at, I'm still grateful because I know where I'm coming from to be
Mhm.
here, and everything that I have or owned, the Lord have given it to me. So I have all right to be grateful. In addition to those two lessons, another lesson I've learned is to believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Your circumstances may not be conducive to where you want to be But
Mhm.
over time, if you believe in yourself, you work hard, you will achieve it. So I've learned several lessons, but those three, to be humble, to be grateful, and to believe in yourself, are the greatest lessons I've learned throughout my life's journey.
I'm going to give you a chance to hail up your parents, your mentors, hail up some people, man. Tell them thanks for their contribution.
Okay, will do. I'd like to take this opportunity to first give God thanks, because if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't have been here and in this position right now. So
Mhm.
thank you, Lord. I'd also like to give a big, huge thank you to my parents, my father, Mark Clarke, who has always been there for me, always pushing me to achieve better and higher. And a special big thanks to my mother. Wow, she has always been there for me through thick and thin, and she always inspires me to go beyond my limits. A special thanks also to my loving sister, who has been one of my main supporters, one of my main fans, and always striving, to do her best. So she sets that example for me. Another big up is to the Harriet family. They know themselves. Thank you for your support and your unconditional love. And for Peter, may God rest his peace. When we got thrown out, he was the one who assisted us and treated us as family, even though we were just strangers. So a special thank you to all of you. God bless you.
All right. But your entire book, Caprice, is about giving thanks to God for what he has done. How important has your faith been? How important is your faith to you?
My faith has been 1,000% important, because, to be honest, when you're coming from poverty and you know that you're in a position of being financially stable, you can afford the things that you want to afford. I attribute that not to my skills or my education or my level of certification, but I attribute those things to God, because if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to become educated. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to even land a scholarship, right?
Mm,
So when I see those things, and even before the blessing started to come, just to know that I have a friend, a best friend who is always there for me through thick and thin, and he has always provided his grace and his mercies. I'm grateful for those things, and I know that those things can only come by God, right?
mhm,
So when I had nothing, God was there. And when I have something, to some extent, God is still there. So my faith was one that anchored me in Christ and helped me
mhm,
to be humble and grateful. So I owe him everything. So my faith is a
mhm.
1,000% important to me.
Amen. Before you leave a message for our young people who, might be from a disadvantaged background who aspire to achieve academic success. Just leave some encouraging words. And you're a motivational speaker as well.
For you who is listening to this video recording, and you have dreams and aspirations, whether it is school, it is life overall, I want to let you know that you have what it takes to achieve them all. No dream, no aspiration, no goal is too big for you. There's a verse in the Bible that says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. So your circumstances may not be conducive right now to the goals you want to achieve, but work hard. Believe in yourself. And even when you stumble, and even if you fail, get up and try again, because you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Don't give up. Never, ever give up. Once you have life, you have hope, and you can do it if you put your mind to it. So be encouraged. whatever dream, whatever aspiration, whatever goal, it is right in the palm of your hands. Just believe in yourself, believe that you can do it, and it will come to pass.
Awesome, awesome. Before you leave, just tell my viewers where they can get your book to buy.
Okay, sure. So my memoir entitled How God Brought Me Out Alive, you can get a copy on Amazon and also on Barnes and Noble online. So those are the two places right now that you can get this memoir, How God Brought Me Out Alive.
Caprice, thanks for stopping by. And boy, it was such an inspiring story that you have here today. Who knows, you might have a second part because I'm sure you have other things in the pipeline. So it was great having you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.